Hi everybody. This is about the third time I've tried to make this video. Everybody talks about coffee dyeing papers and they use the oven to dry them and it gets hot. Well, frankly, this is Florida. You don't turn your oven on unless you have to. I think it's 85 degrees out here and it's late in October. So, and that's lucky. We've had a cool down. So I'm going to kind of show you what I do today. And it's one of those things that I can dye a little bit, I can dye a lot, and I can just do it whenever. So this is my favorite little pan, and for the most part it holds most papers. It's not wanting to hold those today, but it'll hold notebook paper, and so it depends on what I'm doing whether or not I use that pan. But if not, I use the big pan. And so it just has to be something flat. And remember, this is coffee. You drink it, so it's not like you can't have can't use the pan afterwards. It's not like you're using some kind of chemical that you don't ever want to have in your food. And what I usually do is whatever my husband leaves in the pot, I just spilled it all down the front of the stove. That was really good. I just pour in there. Now, if he doesn't leave me enough to coffee dye with, or if I know I'm going to do a bunch more, I just put it in here and save it up. I don't make anything special. I just use the coffee he drinks. Granted, he drinks some pretty dark coffee. So I just put that coffee in there, and then I just start layering in my papers, and I put in whatever I happen to want to coffee dye. And this is some cream colored paper I just got. I want to try and see what happens when you coffee dye it. Haven't a clue. And you see, I just push it in. Now, since I'm going to dye quite a bit today, I am going to put the rest of my coffee in here. And it doesn't take a ton. See, it was just, let's see, that was 20 ounces. And I just start layering it in. And I don't worry about whether or not it's completely covered with coffee right away, because I happen to like it if it's not. So I just start sticking stuff in there. And I happen to have a project I need quite a bit of this large paper for, so I'm just going to stick it in there. Now, I try to stick it in there one sheet at a time. Doesn't always happen. Okay, and I'm just going to keep layering it. And those are just little paper doilies. Now, if I really was going to worry about this, getting everything, then I would make sure that all my paper was covered with coffee. But I like the inconsistencies. So it makes me pleased to have layers where they don't look the same. I like the marks that the puddles will leave. And you can shift this back and forth too, like so, and it'll get on your paper. Oh, these are some envelopes I just got. They're kind of bent. So I am going to put them in the coffee dye to see what happens. I do open my little flappy things when I do envelopes because I don't like them to glue themselves together. Okay, we've about got enough for you to see what I'm doing. I just continue doing this until it looks like the coffee is, and I've got a lot of coffee in here today, so I could do this whole thing. I really have more than enough coffee to do all the papers I brought out here this morning. But I'm gonna stick this last little doily in, and maybe another piece of this cream stuff so I can see how it behaves. And a couple more of these envelopes, and then we're going to call it done. Now we do want to leave it for a few minutes. Until some of the top layers can get coffee on them. So I'm going to leave it sit there for just a second and wash my hands. I'll be right back. Okay, so I've let this soak long enough that I cleaned up the floor where I had spilled the coffee. And then I've come back to it. Now, I don't particularly want totally white spots, so I have just now kind of put them together, and that's fine. If they've got some white spots, cool, because it's that mottled look. So what I do then is I bring the tray to the sink, and I just dump off as much as I possibly can. I just hold the papers. Let me see if I can do this backwards so that you can see. And I just hold it sideways like that until most of the coffee runs off. It takes a minute or two. You notice the papers are sticking right to the pan. They might flap out of there. You might want to hold them up, but I don't usually have too much trouble with it. There was a lot of coffee in that pan. Okay. So now I have to move the camera so that you can see what I do next. And this is taking way longer for me to do this video than it normally takes me to do the papers. Alright, so over here on my counter I have an assortment of racks. This is just like a baking rack. This is a broken piece of a like a milk crate. This is just a sink protector. This happens to be a little heart-shaped muffin tin. These are actually office things that hold papers. And all of this stuff, except for this little basket, which I got at the dollar store, I have collected at thrift stores. And I bought this basket partially to contain all this stuff. This is what I keep it in, but also because it's got a cool texture on the back. So now what I'm going to do is to take these pieces of paper out, and let me spin the camera back around so you can see. And let's get you down. If I'm busy, if I'm terribly busy, I just leave them sit in the tray. But if I have time, I just take them apart and lay them out. We want to lay them flat. Now, you might think that the paper is very, very fragile. It's not as fragile as you think. The thing I can tell you is that if you're worried about it, just let it sit in the tray for a while. mess up a little corner taking it apart this way, but I did just tear that one just a tiny little bit. But for the most part, all that's going to happen is that it's going to be a little hard to pick up at first, and then once you've got it picked up, it's not a big deal. You just kind of lay it out. And the reason I lay it out on these things, it's not so that it dries faster, but because then it gets these different little textures in it. There are lines and all kinds of things that happen because this paper has been laid out on these trays. Now I'm about to run out of trays. So now a lot of times I leave these doilies on top of another piece of paper because as they dry, they will give the paper a different texture kind of thing. Now, if you didn't have any place except your table to put this out, you might want to protect your table with a sheet of plastic or something. I don't worry about it on this counter. I just lay things out. Now, I've run out of little places to put things, so I'm just going to leave them in the tray. And let them sit on top of one another. As they dry, the corners will dry first, which is really interesting, and then I will be able to take them apart even more easily. I'm just going to leave the camera set up and turn the fan on. Oh, I have another spot over here. I missed a whole spot, so I guess I'll pull this one off. And sometimes I don't even bother to take them out of the tray. I just leave them sit there. And it all depends on how much time I have. If I don't have enough time to pull them up, then I don't worry about it. So I'm going to leave those sit there. I'm going to let these other pieces dry, and we'll be back in a little bit. Okay, I'm back. The thinner papers are all dry and ready to go. The thick things like the guest check and the envelopes are not quite dry yet, but I wanted to show you that I just leave these sitting here. Now, if I had left them overnight, they'd have been fine, but I just come in here and I go ahead and oh, I'm on the wrong side of the camera. I just pick them up and put them over here. See, they come apart just fine, even though they've been sitting in the tray. And the drier they get, the more their corners are easy to pick up. Oh, it looks like I've got several layers on top here. So, part of the problem is the light's not good in here tonight, so it's hard to see. And I just leave those little doilies attached. And that way, they just kind of leave a mark sort of on the paper. Now there's two pieces there. But this means I do not have to turn on my oven. Now, that's really cool. I don't know if you can see it, but because the edge dried faster than the middle, it's got a different color to it. And I've got room for one more piece. Oh, actually two, because that guest check can lay on this little one. And then I'm going to move this out of the way and see if I can show you some of the texture that the racks give it. This is a doily. And I don't know with this camera if you can see some of the I love the lines that the racks give the paper. And look at this one. This one's yummy. This was laying on the little heart tray, and then it just has little sort of bleed lines into it. And this has little bits of line. Apparently there's a little wet spot. I probably flipped some. And this has little lines, and that's all from those racks. This was where it was laying a different direction. And sometimes they're just sort of plain. So that is how I coffee dye paper. I hope you've enjoyed this, and I hope it makes it easier for you. Turning on the oven was just not something I was going to do. So you guys have a great afternoon. Have fun. Make some art. Bye-bye.